Aloha! Welcome back to the Anxiety Coaches Podcast. I'm your host and coach, Gina Ryan, and I'm so happy to be with you again today as we consider the many ways to bring your mind and body back to its natural peace and calm. In today's episode, I'm talking about let time pass, and this is part 1. This is Claire Week's approach to overcoming anxiety. Now, the other pieces of this were face, accept, and float. That's what she has. Face, we did in episode 987. Accept, episode 997. Float, episode 1020, and let time pass is today. Now, this is part 1. Part 2 will be out shortly. So, letting time pass. We all know that the nature of anxiety is to not want to wait for anything. So, I know this is extremely difficult. As a matter of fact, Claire Weeks put it this way. She said, "It is not easy to face, accept, and let time pass. It is especially difficult to let time pass because you may already have let so much time pass in suffering and despair that asking you to let more time pass may seem an impossible demand. It is difficult but necessary." End of quote by Dr. Claire Weeks. I hope you can hear that. I don't think this is easy for you, and it wasn't easy for me, even though I didn't know Claire Weeks back in my day of going through anxiety, but I definitely understand these 4 pieces and can see in my life how I went through all of them. So let's talk just today about letting time pass. Now, the nature of anxiety is something that needs to be understood, and Dr. Weeks emphasized that anxiety symptoms, even though they are distressing, they are not dangerous. I say this like a mantra to clients. Discomfort is not meaning you are in danger. While distressing, these anxiety symptoms, they are not dangerous. They're part of the body's natural response to a perceived threat. And by understanding this deeply, we can begin to reduce the fear of the symptoms themselves. And instead of fighting against anxiety symptoms or trying to escape from them, Dr. Weeks encouraged acceptance, accepting the presence of anxiety without adding additional fear or resistance. This really helps to reduce the overall intensity of the experience. Now, anxiety often doesn't dissipate immediately. Dr. Weeks taught that it is important to give the body and mind time to adjust and heal by allowing time to pass. Without adding secondary fear or frustration, the body can gradually return to a state of calm. So this is where the time comes in. Even though you have already spent a lot of time in distress, you have to stay there a little bit longer while your mind and body begin to heal. Anxiety can create a vicious cycle where fear of the symptoms perpetuates the symptoms themselves. You know this, I know this. This is what I call the trip down the wormhole, where one thing leads to the other, and we're in that cycle that we are stuck in. And by letting time pass, individuals, you and I, if we are getting upset about something, we can break the cycle. You can learn through experience that the symptoms are not harmful and that they can be endured without resorting to avoidance or panic. Now, over time, as we repeatedly face and accept anxiety, without reacting and without additional fear, which I sometimes call the second arrow, the body and mind become habituated to the symptoms. This means that the anxiety response diminishes in intensity and frequency. Just like you built the habit of freaking yourself out, just like I did too, we build the habit of being calm and not running away or panicking. But we have to do it over time. We face and accept without reacting with additional fear. I know you can do this. It takes time. And it also means that you have to trust the process. Letting time pass requires trust in the process. Dr. Weeks assured her patients that if they followed her method and allowed time for the body to heal, they would see improvement. And I have to tell you, I have talked to a lot of people over many years now, and I know this to be true. So in essence, let time pass is about giving the natural healing process of the body and the mind an opportunity to work without interference from our additional fear, resistance, or impatience. Now, you've heard me talk about it before because we all know that fear puts us in the cycle, but resistance and impatience are just the same. Our body will react as if there is a problem, and that is where we want to stay out of that place of being on edge, waiting for the other shoe to drop. Oh no, what's happening? We don't need to go there. We want to let the body and mind begin to do their work and heal without interference from fear, resistance, or impatience. And that's where letting time pass comes in. We cannot be impatient. This approach encourages you to be compassionate with yourself and to understand that recovery from anxiety is a gradual process. I know you want it to happen right now, and I know that it will happen for you, but it is a gradual process. As a matter of fact, it is so gradual that when I look back over my process and all those years, and people would even ask me, oh, well, when was your last panic attack? Or, you can't remember because it is such a gradual process. Things start to have so much time in between each upset or each anxiety flare that eventually you're not even thinking about it. So you don't have a clock on it. You don't have a calendar on it. So you don't know, which is beautiful. Not knowing about your anxiety in that way is beautiful because you're not focused on it. You're just living your life. So let's look a little bit at the nature of anxiety. Now, a normal response is what's happening. Anxiety symptoms such as your racing heart, sweating, rapid breathing, which can go into really uncomfortable breathing. These are all parts of our fight or flight response. It's a normal reaction to perceived threats. People with anxiety disorders often misinterpret these symptoms, these feelings, as signs of serious health problems or impending disaster. Now, that's where I went. I didn't have a whole list of health anxiety issues, although I would worry about that sometimes, but I just had this impending doom feeling. The other shoe was going to drop, something was going to happen. This was a misinterpretation, and it would lead to increased fear and more severe symptoms and sensations. So remember that word, misinterpretation. You are misperceiving what is actually happening. And Dr. Weeks emphasized educating anybody that was feeling this way about the benign nature of these symptoms And you guys know that now if you've been listening to the show for a while. You understand that these symptoms are not harmful, but rather exaggerated responses to stress. And they can reduce the fear and stress associated with them, and you can reduce the fear and stress associated with these exaggerated responses by understanding what is happening, by knowing that this is a misinterpretation and that this is a normal response for what I am misinterpreting. This is where we are doing it ourselves, even though we're not doing it consciously. But when you find those pieces and you can start putting them together, it's really, really freeing. We want to stop fighting anxiety or trying to push it away as we are letting time pass, because that only intensifies the symptoms. Resistance is not letting time pass. Resistance creates a feedback loop of fear, which exacerbates the conditions that we're going through, the symptoms and sensations. And acceptance means allowing those symptoms to be present without judgment or resistance. It doesn't mean resignation. We're not happy to have it. We're not saying, yeah, okay, this is just my life. But rather, it's recognizing the symptoms for what they are and not adding any additional fear to the experience. I call this going to neutral. You don't have to like it, but you don't have to hate it. You can just see that this is what's happening right now and just go on. Nothing is particularly wrong. The body is just responding. Now, this approach aligns with any of the mindfulness practices that we have done here, where individuals observe their feelings and bodily sensations without trying to change them or without trying to escape from them. Many people expect immediate relief from anxiety, and I want to say that this is unrealistic. Immediate relief is not possible. Like people will say to me, well, I meditated, but it didn't go away. We meditate for different reasons. We meditate, it's like taking vitamins. You do that ahead of time. We're getting ahead of the game here. This anxiety that you have, these symptoms and sensations, you want to understand them, and then they will begin to dissipate. We don't do XYZ to make it go away. We don't take a magic pill to make it go away. That doesn't happen. It will always just come back again. It's gradual process. And we can be persistent in applying the principles of acceptance and understanding. And this takes time. This is let time pass. Symptoms may fluctuate, but consistent practice leads to lasting improvement. And that means doing the practices we talk about here that get us ahead of the game, the meditation, the body care, the self-care, the mindfulness in daily living, all of the things that we do so that we can be on top of our game and not have to feel like just the wind blowing the wrong way is enough to set us off into a fear reaction. But you have to do this over and over again, along with noticing when you are having symptoms and sensations and being okay with that. Again, coming back to neutral, being patient with yourself and recognizing that recovery takes time. And this helps in maintaining a calm and compassionate attitude toward the healing process. Know that it takes time. Get that understanding from your head down into your heart that, okay, I've been working at this for a while and I was off base for a while, but I can do this and I understand it's going to take time and I can still do it. We have to remember to keep the cycle from going around and around, we need to break it. We need to interrupt it. Anxiety symptoms can create that cycle where the fear causes more anxiety, and that can keep the whole thing going. By facing the symptoms without adding additional fear, we disrupt the cycle. We are able to break it or interrupt it. We learn through experience that the symptoms, even though they're uncomfortable, we remember that they are not dangerous. And here's the key: they can be endured. Let time pass. So repeatedly facing and accepting anxiety will build your confidence that you can handle it, and that reduces the overall power that anxiety has over you. The habituation which happens is the process which the nervous system becomes so accustomed to the stimulus, leading to a decrease in the response over time. Like I said earlier, just like you got in the habit of getting yourself into the fear cycle, you will get now into desensitization and habituate out of it. We're just doing it in reverse. You put yourself in it, you can put yourself out of it. I know. I see it all the time. By continuously exposing yourself to things that are anxious coming up in your life, situations that you don't like and you may have avoided before, you can now be with them, have your anxiety arise, but see if you can start reacting with less fear because you are understanding that these situations are not threats. And you can begin reducing the anxiety response. Now, this is a gradual process that requires consistent practice, and the intensity and frequency of the anxiety symptoms will decrease. But again, what does it take? It takes letting time pass. We have to have faith in our recovery, trusting that the process means having faith that time and consistent practice of these principles we talk about here and those that Claire Weeks talks about in her books, that recovery will happen. Dr. Weeks reassured her patients that their bodies and minds have the capacity to heal. Now, don't forget that. You have the capacity to heal, both mind and body. And by following her method, she said that they can achieve lasting relief from anxiety. And I know that's true. As you start to notice small improvements, your confidence in the process will grow, reinforcing your commitment to this method. I hope that you are able to put this face, accept, float, and let time pass into your life. If you can just remember those 4 things, you will be able to do something each day along those lines. And in our next episode, I'm going to talk about more of the how-to. How can you actually get yourself to be okay with letting some time pass? I hope you'll tune in. And now for today's quote. It is not easy to face, accept, and let time pass. It is especially difficult to let time pass because you may already have let so much time pass in suffering and despair that asking you to let more time pass may seem an impossible demand. It is difficult but necessary. And that's from Dr. Claire Weeks. I'll be back in a few more days with another podcast. Until then, be well and aloha.